welcome to The Den, where we're a source of inspiration by using our knowledge, voices, and experiences to empower women to move with intent. And today's show is just another continuation of aging and sexuality because we had so much to talk about. So let's dive in.
Hi, I'm Michelle, entrenadora.
Hi, I'm Dr. Uchenna, the DR.
Hi, I'm Sherelle, the socially conscious social worker.
And I'm Dr. Evie Taylor, AKA the People's Professor, and together we are the Muse.
So we talked a little bit before about pelvic floor and all the different diagnoses and what you should do in prevention. So we want to kind of have another conversation just more about aging and sexuality. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but and when I say sexuality, I don't just mean sex or sexual intercourse. I mean what it looks like for women as we age and what our sexual identity, our needs and our wants, and how medicine or I should say medical conditions impact that, if that makes any sense, right? And so we have Dr. Akinwande here still with us. We're just rapping.
I love that. My patients call me that.
Dr. Val it is.
Dr. Val. Okay, so I thought this topic was really good because a lot of women have pain, or their spouses have chronic illnesses, or they have chronic illnesses, and they just don't have any kind of intimacy, or they don't feel like after a certain age they're even supposed to feel like vibrant because they just haven't. I mean, I could go on about what I witness and observe in my patients, but I always tell them, you're never too old. If there's something going on with you, let's figure it out. I mean, right, Dr. Val, right?
I agree. Absolutely. There are lots of research studies that show like when couples are happy, they can have sex well into their 80s and 90s.
Yes.
That's not the perspective that we are fed as a nation, but it is a reality for many. And again, like you said, some of us just accept that things are kind of not the way I used to feel. And so this is just a new way of me being, and it's just not true.
So let's talk about the first thing that I see mostly, and I'm going to say mostly that interferes directly with sex and intimacy is low libido and pain with intercourse. So low libido meaning just not having that desire anymore. And it can either be a one-off, not having desire, or not having desire because it's painful, right? It's painful when you're having intercourse. So from your perspective, for women, when they come to see you and that's their concern, what do you do?
So it depends on a number of things. I think I mentioned before how I don't just look at, okay, you're having pain with sex. We have to consider all of the factors in a person's life that might be leading to them having a painful sexual experience. When I say this, what I mean is, what are their life stressors? What are the things that they are doing to engage in intercourse with their spouse? Are they using foreplay? Is it, what are the conditions that make it to where this painful experience is happening? When I do my internal pelvic floor examination, I'm going to feel for the tenderness of the muscles. Sometimes if there's tension in the muscles, I'll know from the moment that I touch them, they're too painful or whatever it is. I'm looking at what medications is a patient on, because I'll give you a perfect example. I had a patient who came to me about 2 months ago, and she was newly married, you guys, unable to have sex with her husband. And, she was extremely disappointed and obviously highly motivated. As a newly married woman in her 20s, she was like, how is this happening to me? And after really digging deep into her history, I found out that she was on birth control for over a decade. There was no reason at all that she was on this birth control, but because of being on this birth control for 10 years, she had stopped having her period. And what I learned in doing my research on this patient is that her vaginal tissues dried up as a direct result of taking this birth control. So one of the first things we did was take what we call a birth control holiday. This is she, talked to her doctor directly, got off the birth control medication, and then I could use her estrogen cream, which was prescribed by her doctor to kind of gradually, stretch her vaginal. And within 6 weeks, she was able to have sex with her husband for the first time. So it's things like that. It really depends on, like I said, what's the patient's experience? How long has she been having these symptoms? Like, what are the factors that are around her lifestyle and her daily habits that are leading to her symptoms? And how can we figure out, what to do next? This is going to be different from a woman who might be going through menopause, right? Because naturally she's losing estrogen, which is going to dry out her vaginal tissue. So she's going to need either some level of a hormone replacement, some vaginal cream that's going to help her with that, and then also to create the most successful kind of environment for her to be enjoying sex with her spouse. Does that make
My
sense?
question is, how do you do that? How do you create that environment?
It depends on the patient, right? So what you have to think about and I make pretty much all of my patients tell me 3 things that bring you joy. Right? So if you are regularly doing the things that bring you joy in your mind, you're going to be naturally in a better headspace. If you, right? If sex is painful because of how it feels, then we need to talk about how to do manual therapy. Sometimes I'll bring spouses or husbands into the sessions and show them, this is how you're going to start with this. We may, show him how to do different techniques, talk about the patient being in different positions. Again, it's a number of things we have to consider to help her get to the other side of why this sexual experience that's so painful.
And it's such a long process to get at answers. I see that I have to ask a lot of questions, right? And patients get so frustrated with being asked a million questions, but I tell them I can't make decisions without having information. And I don't, and when you're a woman that has issues, and you've been having issues, whether it's like we talked about previously, endometriosis, or you're perimenopausal, or you have chronic health conditions, all of that's a factor. And then mentally, all of that's a factor, right? And so it's not just one approach. It's just not one factor that we have to focus on.
No.
I mean, I honestly, especially with my perimenopausal women, especially those with emotional disturbances or derangements, they go to behavioral health. I recommend behavioral health because as we're going through this process, getting you to where you want to be, you're going to have to work through some things too. It wasn't even a patient, it's someone who is a staff member at the clinic, and she came and she asked me about being on local estrogen, and she said, oh my God. And she's like in her 50s. No, she's probably in her 60s. I don't really know her age. I'm guessing she's in her 60s. She says, oh, doctora, that made me feel like I wanted to have sex again. Oh, I don't want to take that anymore. I was like, why not? Why do you not want to have? Because my husband's gonna want it all the time. So I don't understand. No, because I mean, and no, really, she said for years she hasn't had, her doctor realized you needed this, and she got on it, and then all of a sudden she just felt, and I said, there's nothing wrong with feeling that way, especially not just sexually, but if it makes you feel better, there's not pain anymore. Like there's nothing wrong with being older and feeling vibrant. I'm using vibrant as a word because I don't know what other word to use, but feeling vibrant and feeling better inside and out. And that matters. I mean, it matters to me as a woman that's aging. I just happen to be a doctor, but I'm a woman that's aging. I'm experiencing changes. All of us are, right? So understanding that these changes, there are remedies for these changes. You don't have to live with them.
I think you brought up a really important point too, because, as a physician, your job and in your limited time with your patient is to try to get to as many answers as possible to kind of get a solution for a patient. And the tough thing about, sexual history is that many women have experienced traumas. And so with my background, this is why it's so key for me to be able to spend this hour of time with the patient, because I have to build that rapport, right? And sometimes I'll work with patients who have, heartbreaking traumas, but I won't learn them until maybe their fourth or fifth visit.
Right.
Because they're even still working through how I got to where I am right now. And sometimes it's a really complex answer, right? Sometimes, as in the case of my patient, it's about taking out the birth control, working through the muscles, a fairly simple answer, right? But for some folks, the issue is so deeply rooted in how they see themselves and how they have changed in life over time, how they deal with stress. It pours over into all the areas of their life, and it is worth really taking the time to figure out, how do we work through all of these things? And again, it takes a multidisciplinary approach, right? It's not something that I can fix on my own. Sometimes the patient needs to go and see, like you said, behavioral therapy, psychology, you know, all kinds of things. But, you know.
So I have a question. I'm wondering, because of course, Cheryl and I are in the mental health field. And so, we see a lot of our clients that have sexual trauma, and that can impact their sex life. So I'm wondering, is there some specific, like maybe relaxation exercises or something that you do? Because I can imagine not even just for trauma histories, but like I'm going to go back to the first time you were on the show and I was like bleeding, like some people get that dry, and I'm thinking me myself, like I get real tense, like if I'm in pain. So like, I know like mentally, if I was to that point where I was that dry and I was bleeding and it was that painful, I would have to say, I'm not having sex. I mean,
They don't.
because
And they don't.
like mentally with that pain, I can see my body would be so tense that I just would not be able to relax. And I would just keep thinking about the pain that's to come. So I imagine that there's probably a lot of women like that it's just the fear of the pain that they're going to experience. So are there some like exercises or things that you do like to address that?
Absolutely. The foundation of everything I teach is diaphragm breathing. That is connecting your breath to your mind. And I like to say that, it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys, for the psychologists and the mental health people in the room, I'm sure you've heard of Pavlov's experiments, back in the day, right? You could train a dog to know what was coming. And so we make the same kind of connections with therapy. So, especially for pelvic floor therapy, I always try to remind the patient, you are in control. No matter what you might think, you are in control in this situation.
You are so right. I always say to my patients, that is the hardest part of my job. Once I get you to understand that you are in control, that's the hardest part of my job. And then everything else is easier. But you are so correct. So correct with that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And so I just, teach them that, look, if anything even starts to feel or look uncomfortable to you, raise your hand. You don't even have to say a word. Blink your eyes. Give me a signal. I'm going to be watching you at all times, because there are little triggers that happen in people's minds that are far beyond what we can comprehend.
Right.
So I try to train my patients to become aware of the triggers. That's where we start. And then connect with your breath to try to tell your mind and your body to relax. And so that is one thing I for sure use with the patient that I mentioned earlier, because again, she had been having this pain for 6 months, and she was too afraid to seek out the help before her honeymoon. But by the time we got to doing therapy, she was already like, no, like just at the thought of her laying on the bed. And so I said, you are in control. Open your eyes so you can see everything. And I'm going to talk you through step by step what we're going to do. Uchenna,
I have a question. Do you have your patients, when they leave you, because as physical therapy, you tell your patients, okay, I give you this for the hour, but you need to go home and do some manual exercises yourself.
Absolutely.
Are women comfortable? Some women aren't comfortable with touching their own bodies, right? Some women don't know their own body. Most women don't know their own bodies, right? Because you spend an hour a week with them. So that leads to, are your patients going home and doing manual exercises for them, on their own or with their spouses?
Absolutely. So this is why I say, okay, for one, I use a mirror pretty much with all my patients. I need you to see exactly what I see so that you understand exactly what I'm doing, even if it makes you uncomfortable. So sometimes, like, let's say it's a woman who has a C-section scar. A lot of those women don't like to look at the scar, don't want to touch the scar, don't want to even be connected to the scar. We start in the mirror with pretty much everything that I do. Then, she may not be comfortable that first time. That's okay. It might take her 4 or 5 visits to become comfortable, but I almost always try to incorporate the spouse. Why? Because that's someone who they're naturally going to be more inclined to be comfortable with, right? Unless there's some kind of trauma associated with that relationship, right? If there's a healthy relationship there, then I say, what do you think about having your husband here? What do you think about me showing? And almost very rarely do I get patients that say, no, I don't want my husband in here. I don't want him to see nothing. I don't want him. No, I mean, and it does happen. But for the patients that are comfortable, and typically if they're uncomfortable with the spouse, then I spend most of my time just trying to get them comfortable with themselves.
How do we have to learn how to women have to learn how to be comfortable with their bodies.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds very,
listen,
do.
to your point, I can't say this enough. Like, I am in a mom's group on Facebook, and there was a mom that came and said, my daughter is 13 years old, starting her period for the first time. This is when these conversations need to be paramount, you guys. Daughter having a period for the first time, and she wants to learn how to wear a tampon, and I don't know what to tell her. There's no reason why you shouldn't know what to tell your daughter about how to wear a tampon. Take a mirror
and show her,
her exactly where it goes.
And I was gonna ask. I'm gonna get to the tampon in a second, but I was gonna ask about or just say not just trauma, because sometimes it's just the way people are socialized culturally.
Absolutely.
They're not comfortable with their body, so they may not have experienced necessarily a trauma. Just they don't think that being sexual is normal or natural. Like you develop sexually too, right? You do that, right? They don't always think that way, so it is a very multidisciplinary process, because then it may be something from behavioral health that we can do that. I have a question about the tampon situation.
Sure.
I remember, and Michelle and I were college roommates, right? So I'm not gonna say that because then it'll make people think. But I remember a person, and we were talking about, who's a virgin, who's whatever, 18-year-old people talking. And I remember someone said that she was using tampons, and her father had gotten angry. Remember, Michelle, listen, if you remember to the story, her father had gotten angry because he found out she was using tampons, so he automatically thought that she was no longer a virgin. And so, and then I remember the talks back then, from me, at least in my family, was like, when women wear tampons, it's not healthy, and then, so it was a while. And then once I was like, the hell y'all talking about? Like, this is the bomb.com. Y'all been holding me back for a long time. Cause like once I was using, I was like, baby, like this is the bomb. So, but it was so, embedded in me that it's not healthy to use a tampon. Is it healthy? Because I got like teenage girls is always around me or whatever. Is it healthy? Is it doing something to your pelvic floor? Going back to that.
I love that question. It can become unhealthy, right? I mean, we can imagine all the ways that it can become unhealthy. You've got to take it out, right? After a certain number of hours. Otherwise, we're going to create a very unhealthy situation. But oh my goodness, tampons
using it regularly like you're supposed to.
Absolutely. Tampons are super helpful for women who have prolapse. Why? It holds things in place. So especially when a woman is on her period, when the tissues get inflamed, having a bowel movement with a tampon in is much easier, believe it or not.
Oh, I know that. I'll say this too about what you said, Sherelle. Growing up, I remember my mom, I had discharge. I'm saying this because as we age, our discharge changes, right?
Right.
And I ask questions, are you having vaginal discharge? What's the consistency? What is it? Does it smell? Does it this? Does it that? Because people don't even know the discharge is a regular, normal, right? But I remember growing up, this is maybe too personal, but I may have been in high school. I was a virgin. Don't mind saying that. And my mom was like, you have discharge. I'm taking you to the doctor. Like, for what? Are you having sex? So I think it's how women young ladies
Socialized,
are socialized, and those messages stick with you, right?
Yeah.
So
Because I told you that girl said that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I thought about that, because my mom was like, you can't wear a tampon. I'm a freaking athlete. I'm having to wear 2 pads and leaving during regional. I remember my regional game, I ran out of the tunnel, ran up to the tunnel, put 2 pads on, because my mom said, you can't wear tampons. So I think as women, that mentally stays with us forever.
Right.
And so when we start having changes in our bodies, number one, we don't seek help because we're embarrassed, because it's taboo. And then number 2, we don't even know that we're having changes. I mean, we just don't know we're having changes. And so that just, that's another thing. We just have to know. We just have to know our bodies and understand that it's nothing to be embarrassed about, nothing to be fearful of, nothing to be made to feel ashamed of. And that's what I think as women. And as we get older, that's where that mentality, we just have to live with it. I don't know. I'm a proponent. I tell my patients, I tell my young patients, I start seeing little babies, little girls, little women, young women through the lifespan. And that's like my message I try to get across, because I realize that I think our society does such a disservice to women, and our bodies are seen as objects more than actual functional beings. And anyway,
one thing I want to add to what you said, Uchenna, because I loved everything you said, is we live in a world now where we can investigate truth, right? We have access to way more information. So investigate the truth, because to what your mom said about your discharge, you have discharge, I'm going to take you to the doctor, it's a kind of a half truth. If you have smelly discharge or copious discharge, and it happens at a certain period or certain time of the day, then that is worth investigating further. But normal discharge, it's not. So investigate the information that people give you about how your body is supposed to function. And again, this is yet another plug for call a physical therapist that specializes in this. We've been trained to do this work. We can answer your questions in a matter of seconds, right? Rather than you trying to do all the guesswork to figure it out, you could spend your 5 hours and do your research, or you can call an expert and we can walk you through exactly what you need to know and how to move forward.
Right. All right. Any more questions?
Dr. Val has to go. So we probably need to end it here with her plug and see pelvic floor PT. And then maybe after she leaves, we can continue the discussion a little bit amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Val. You are like, I'm your fan.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge and your expertise. We appreciate it.
I'm so grateful,
Yeah.
so grateful that you guys invited me to speak with you all. It's been such a great time to just have a conversation amongst girlfriends. Like one of you now.
Yeah.
And just kind of share what I know and remind women that you're not alone. Everybody, we can move forward and have like joy, right, as we age, because aging is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So to everyone out there, thank you again, and make sure you join us
in the den,
where places don't make you feel at home.
People do.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Dr. Val.
Bye, Dr. V.
Oh, y'all, I am so excited that we had Dr. Val on. I'm just saying, because for me, I don't think that I would have ever saw a pelvic floor PT. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like we talked about, like how we're socialized. I'm just thinking like, I was feeling like I'd be really uncomfortable. Like I'm going to go and what's going to happen. And I don't know. I just didn't feel comfortable with it at all.
I didn't even know that type of specialist existed.
Yeah. No,
Right.
I mean, I knew because my daughter's in PT school, but only like a year ago. But even when she started talking about it, and even like in our first show, when Dr. Val was talking about it, I was thinking, I don't think I can ever do that. I don't think I can do it.
You know,
But the more that I talk
So
to
why
them,
do you, I have a question, I'm, because we talked about being comfortable. Why do you think you couldn't do it? Just, why didn't you think you could do it? Because you may be different now. Why do you think you couldn't do it?
yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, even when I go to the gynecologist, I'm very tense.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean? Just sitting there, and as soon as
Mhm.
the doctor
Yeah, I don't
starts
like
walking up, my legs tense up. I'm like tight, and they're
it's
like,
a marathon, right?
"Relax,
Like,
relax."
And then,
you're like,
and then we tell you to relax. I've
I
stopped
can't
telling
relax.
people to relax. I stopped it.
I don't
Hold your knee
know.
out. You're gonna feel my finger. It's gonna be a little cold. It's a little gel. You're gonna feel a little pressure.
The whole time I'm
Relax.
hearing that spill, I'm like this.
put something on your ceiling. I used to have a doctor, and I'm going to say that I used to have a doctor that used to have something on it, like a picture, like, you know, intricate
Mhm.
colors, and it was like, oh, and by the time I looked at that, allowed me to relax. So
Well,
every
that's
time I
a
go
good-
to the doctor's office, I say that, like, why you don't have
I'm
something
gonna
on the
do that.
ceiling?
Sherelle, thank you. I am going to get a
Yeah.
picture to put
A
up in
nice,
the-
colorful something, and I just be looking up there, and I'm like, oh, what's that? A lake and and by the time
Yeah.
you do that, you are not focused. And I'm like Evie, like I used to get so anxious about those little clanky things. Them little, as soon as you hear the clank, I'm like, like, oh, it just, like, and then they started using the plastic ones, because when I first started going, they were using the metal ones, and I
Right.
just
And it's go in the metal ones. You hear the screwing.
Clank.
So I think it's
Okay.
just, yeah, so we're making an association with like maybe negative experiences. I don't know. And it's just because I think that as women, we don't talk about it. Like we were talking about, you know, Chinna, like you said, like with your patients, most women don't feel comfortable with their own bodies, you know, and things like that. Even like the example that was given about not knowing how to talk to your daughter about a tampon, or just even like, you know, people thinking that if you use a tampon, that means you're not a virgin and all that kind of stuff. It's like how we're socialized. And
Right.
as women, we don't talk about sexuality for the most part, you know.
Do you know people don't even know that, like when I ask about discharge, and I'm not judging anyone, but they're like, what's discharge? Like what does that mean? And
Because we don't talk about it.
and I'm because you don't talk about it. You don't know.
You know
like,
what? Because I think people think it's nasty.
When it's a natural part of
It's a
women's
natural
bodies.
part of your
Because
body.
Right.
it's been
Talks about it.
objectified to think like women's bodies, like you said it right, Uchenna, when you said that we've been objectified. Like it's not a
Yeah.
functional body. A functional body, if it's moving around anything, right? A damn car, you know, it'll leak fluid or whatever. Like, why can't people think that our body, I know, right? That was some kind of damn analogy. But I'm just,
We're like a car.
but I'm just saying, they don't think of our bodies in really healthy ways.
Mhm.
I went to something some time ago, and I thought about it because Michelle has this thing when she cracks the egg, she takes the white part out, right? And so when I think about, I've been doing the same thing, right? So, so I remember going somewhere, and this guy was like, "Who eats eggs? It's a chicken's period." So when he said it like that, I was like, so it was like months that I didn't eat eggs because I was like horrified at the thought. And then when I thought about it, I was like, "You idiot. That's not what that is." Like I was so angry. And I stopped eating omelets that I love because this idiot said something and it made it seem like it was smart, and it was a man, and he was just like, "Oh, it's a."
But you know what else? That's interesting too, because we socialize men, and men
Yes.
should know that it's a natural, like, I'm not gonna go pick up tampons for you. Why not?
Now, he don't want to
like,
get the wrong
men should-
ones, but I'm just saying.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm
Like
just
it's
saying,
such a
like,
bad
as
thing,
a-
like it's such a
Yeah.
negative.
it's
nasty
such a
thing.
negative, like
Yeah.
what's going on with us is just so, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a passion for this, like with my patients, especially my patients that are older who have no clue. I don't, and I'm so happy Dr. Val came, because I am literally going to refer every woman to her, every woman, because you've got to feel comfortable. I don't know, and you have to get your husband to feel comfortable. If you want a healthy relationship, it's not just about sex, right? It's about changing in your body, because I think your spouse should know when your changes as well as you. Because I mean, when you think about breast, when you think about lumps in the breast, you know, most men identify that there's
The
it may be, yeah, they know. So a man should notice when, even if your vaginal, I'm saying this, but your environment changes, because it's natural to change, but he should notice that, right? So honey, maybe you should go to the doctor, something's different, you know, but
These are the conversations that husbands and wives or partners are not having. You know,
Right.
people don't feel comfortable enough talking about, you know, you can have sex all day, but you can't talk about it, or you can't talk about your body.
Or you can't turn on the light. See, you don't turn on the light. You know, I have patients that don't turn on the light to have sex. I said, no.
Before it's even the part, before it's even the
Absolutely.
partners, it's your own way of thinking about it. Like, we got to change the way women think about their own bodies first before they can introduce that to their partners, because people aren't comfortable.
Yeah, and you're very uncomfortable with even looking at themselves, like looking. I mean, just yeah.
Even in marriage counseling,
and I probably make people.
When my clients come in for marital counseling, and if I bring up sex, it's like immediate embarrassment. They're stiff. I mean, like, you're coming in and that's part of the problem, but then we can't talk about it. You know, it's like everybody immediately, it's quiet. Neither one of them wants to talk.
Yeah.
But you have 8 kids. So you weren't, I'm just saying.
Because
right?
the light was off and I just got into bed and that's it.
But also, you know, we've grown up in our homes learning that our bodies are our personal space, that what happens between you and your mate is a personal thing. You're not supposed to, you know, so that's kind of like
it's ingrained
in our thought process as well. It's probably like ingrained in there, you know. So
but it's good that we're talking about it.
Well, just talking about it with the doctors and the psychologists and all that, that might be hard, I'm sure, at first, especially because people aren't used to, I mean, talking to each other is one thing, but then talking to somebody else too, that's like extra.
Well, I think it's important that you talk to even your,
One thing that I like that Dr. Val said is that, you know, like when she's coming to the house, you know, like she's trying to incorporate the partner. She said it's kind of like, you know, you're paying money for a massage. And she kind of made that analogy, like, you know, like you get massages. So kind of think about it like this, or you go to the gym and you exercise. And so what the viewers didn't hear when she was leaving, she said that sometimes she does parties, right? And so I know that might sound like a little weird, like a party, like a pelvic floor exercise party, but we don't think it's weird, I guess, when we work out together. And this is kind of like
do massage. People do massage parties. People get together and have massage. People do Botox parties. They get together and have Botox and get their nails done and all that stuff.
All right. So would y'all do a pelvic floor party?
I would, because some of the things may not require her, because she says also sitting on the balls. Remember, she talked about the exercises, going forward, going back.
Like an exercise class.
Yeah, so I'm sure it probably, you know, she has some things that she would do privately and some things that she would do, you know, in a general kind of sense. So I'm all for it. I'm all
for it too.
I'm all for
I mean, people used to have those parties with sexual toys. I mean, remember that they used to have, somebody used to. So, I mean, I know, I just think the taboo needs to be removed, because it's part of life. It's who we are. It's what we are.
Yeah. And here's the thing, I guess, with the stigma, like you said, Uchenna, like it's a taboo, but we need to start thinking, you know, like I'm really about prevention. And so it's like, it is okay. Like people are like, oh, well, you know, you have problems with your bladder or bowels or whatever, so it's okay to go. But, you know, like if you're having problems with your sex life or something, then it might not be okay. You know, the people perceive things differently. So we need to, you know, it needs to be a little bit, I think we need to be having these conversations. I think doctors need to get educated more on, you know, like you said, like the referrals and things like that. I don't know. It's not going to impact the money that they make, because people are still going to have to go get their annual exams and things. So why not?
But I think like also too, now that we know, Evie, that's like you said earlier, that's also another arsenal, another intervention that we can also, a referral we can make as well, you know, from when doing, you know, working with women or working with couples is something we can say, go to your doctor. And also, and maybe when more people are asking for, because like I said, my doctor I didn't go in with the complaint. She just said, you're maturing, you may want to go here. And I was like, what for? And because I I never heard of it before I heard the referral, and she was saying, thank me later, and she smiled. And you need more innovative doctors like that. And so now we will use that as part of our arsenal when we're working with patients, when we're working with clients. So it's a good thing. Thank you, Uchenna, for bringing that to our attention, because you were very adamant about doing, sexuality and aging.
At first I was like, what is that? What kind of doctor is she? I did not get it. I didn't get it at all.
Yeah.
Definitely something to learn.
Yeah.
That's
It's
really
more
good.
well, of course. I mean, we got to do what's right for our people, right? I mean,
Yep.
what is it? The more you know, there's a little saying, right? Knowledge is power.
Right.
So we just gave, hopefully we just gave hundreds and thousands of women just a little sparkle, like, oh,
Yeah.
right. And that'll, I think personally, it'll change their lives.
Yeah.
Change profoundly. It could change their lives.
And just the way she even talked about, the connectedness of like the rest of the work. Because I know, like, if I feel, I have a woman that I'm a Peloton rider. And so there's one of I take yoga, and there's a young woman on there, Black woman. She is phenomenal. And when she talks, she goes, my IT bands is in conversation with me. Like she's saying, like, I'm hurting there. Like,
burning.
Right. And she particularly tells you to flex it, to move that muscle, because it's so important to the core body. Right. And so Dr. Val was saying that today too, but it's so important. And I know that I paid a lot of attention to my hips and stretching out my hips, because I've had so many girlfriends who are getting hip replacement, in my age. And I'm like, what? So I've been really like stretching in a hip, and then it gives me less back pain. Like just that whole strengthening of that core, those global muscles make a really big difference. And so the range of motion in my hip area is so much different than it used to be. If I was driving, for like an hour or so, when I would get out, like, oh my God, my hips, I don't feel that anymore as I'm working, paying attention to it. So I ride real hard, but you also need to stretch it and relax that muscle so that you don't have that pain.
Tightening,
Yeah.
Oh my.
This is so good. Thank you, Dr. Uchenna.
Oh Lord. It was good. I mean, and honestly, I didn't know all of this, right? I'm learning things. I'm like, okay. I know it'll help me in my practice, and not just in my practice, but like us as girlfriends. Like, I think it's important we talk about, what's going on with each other's bodies, because I could learn from you. Like, we didn't even know you went to a pelvic floor specialist before, right? And I've known Val for a few years, and I knew what she did, but I actually didn't really know until I called her, because I was stumped with a patient. I was stumped with a patient with chronic pelvic pain anyway. And I talked to her, and I was like, oh, that's what you do. Oh, yeah. Okay. And so I don't know. I just thought it was good for all of us.
Love it.
I think we just need to have these conversations. We need to have these conversations. And
pelvic party.
All right, so we will keep the viewers updated, and maybe we'll hold each other accountable and check in to see if we really did schedule our pelvic floor appointments.
Okay.
So, and if any of you out there are experiencing any kind of pain, or after listening to our conversation and this dialogue, you're thinking, I want to do something preventive too, look for a pelvic floor PT in your area.
Also feel free to ask any questions.
Right.
Yeah. And if we don't have the answer, we'll get the answer for you.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, so make sure you join us
in the den,
where places don't make you feel at home.
People do.